Join us on another adventure with Wild and Free,
Interior Alaska.
Before I jump right in and tell you what happened in phase 2 of putting our log cabin together, I just want to show you a life hack that we like to use after every weekend adventure from our very furry dogs. If you haven't tried to use a leaf blower on your vehicle to quickly clean it out so that you don't go to work with all the hair, I highly recommend it. So anyways, moving into phase 2 of our cabin, what you'll see are a few pictures at first because we were so busy I didn't have time to record a lot of it, but we did install the floor joist for our foundation as well as the insulation and then the plywood on top. And once that happened, we were able to start laying our logs. We used the button pass style.
Well, it's time to cut the door. You hold my beer?
Button pass is when you lay one down and they butt up against each other, and then the next one is going to pass above it. It's the easiest style to do, so that's how we did that without having to notch. In between them, you do a layer of insulation, which is called sill insulation, and you roll that out and stick your next log on. The first day we got 5 logs up, and as we continued weekend after weekend, it got much harder the higher we got. And right here you'll see that we are making our very first cut in our logs, which gave me a little anxiety once you put it all together and then you have to cut it up. And so this was our first go at it with a chainsaw to cut our door so that we could easily get in, as we were having to climb up it and leap in, and it was starting to get much higher. I'd like to say that my husband did an incredible job for his first cuts, and it came out pretty awesome. Another thing to note was you'll see that we stacked some of the logs kitty corner inside of our cabin so that we could save those for later and put those on the wall as it got higher. The rest of our logs are outside of the cabin, and having to lift them up over the edge was pretty difficult. Because our cabin is built on a slope, like I mentioned, it was getting really difficult to lift them up the higher the walls got, since these are 150 pounds each. So we had to think outside the box and develop a system in order to be able to lift them up, so that we could save the ones that you're about to see here, right there, stacked for inside for as it gets even higher, because we're doing 14 high. Lifting the logs up to this point was probably as easy as it was going to get. After that, we used the pulley system. So here it is. Because we are off-grid, remote, getting any big piece of equipment out here was not going to happen. So this is a tripod that you would typically see used for hunting, like hanging a gigantic moose. It's actually what it's from. It was hooked to a four-wheeler on the other side using the winch, and we would put the strap around the log. We would winch it, so we'd raise it up, and once we raised it up, we would lift up only one end and move it around. And then we could teeter-totter it.
You guys should really be charging admission
To the edge of the cabin logs, and then push it forward and then move it into place. Doing this definitely helped with the manual labor. It was still pretty difficult to slide it where it needed to be and then keep rotating it afterwards. Wait for it. You have to spin this end around.
You log grabber. I like grabbing wood.
Send it forward. Slide it forward, Kim. Becky undoes it.
It's a system.
Once we successfully got the log up onto the walls, we then would slide it around from edge to edge to get it over to where we needed it. So we always were loading them from one spot, and then we would pick it up and shift it from corner to corner and flip it in place. This was definitely much easier for us.
Keep going.
So these giant logs that we're winching are going to be used for our purlins. The purlins are what's going to support our roof. My youngest son was excited to be a huge help pulling those all the way over. Once we got them over, we had to delimb and debark, which isn't fun. End of another weekend. Outhouse is built and 5 more logs stacked on. It's getting harder and harder the higher it gets. I know you saw a sneak peek of our outhouse. Stay tuned. I'll show you exactly how we built that in a later video. But it's nice to have somewhere to take a poop. Now that we have the 4Runner, we would use the roof and inside to haul everything out there. It would get interesting, but this was a Workhorse and it made everything get where it needed to be in the summer. So I'm out here all alone, except for the dogs. Hey Bruce. Hi Dendra. And I just uncovered the tarp from the cabin. And man, that's a challenge by yourself. The thing is heavy. It's like a 40-foot long, or maybe 50-foot, 30 feet wide tarp. Yeah. Outhouse is still there. It's a beautiful day. Hardly any clouds. I'm waiting for my husband and father-in-law to bring back some more wood. You can see peeking out over there. We're starting to bring down our deck wood. And that's a major feat. So I'll drink to that. So here's a peek at inside where we're at when we got out here. So where you see the gaps in insulation, those will be windows. Sometimes we forgot and ran the insulation, but to try to conserve it, we tried not to. Yes, the door will be bigger, as my kids keep asking. To hold the logs together, we are using 9-inch log screws. These bad boys are pretty expensive at more than $1 a piece, and we had to use a quarter drill in order to get them in. So that was a lesson learned pretty early on. It's difficult when you're so far away and you try to be prepared, but sometimes you just have to call it quits, go back to town, and get another tool for the job. Another tricky thing was making the cuts for the loft. We had to notch those out so they didn't go through the other side so that we could perfectly fit our 4-sided log into that notched area to support our loft. It was pretty challenging, and we did have to chisel out some of the rougher cut areas so that it would fit in there perfectly like a glove. But my husband's pretty damn amazing, and he did an excellent job making these cuts with the chainsaw, and it worked out super well. This weekend of progress, we were able to get all 5 of our loft beams installed and start working on our loft floor. So the loft is for our boys. That's where they're going to be able to sleep and play. Now that we have on 14 rows of logs and got the loft notches cut, we were able to cut our first windows. So we only started out with a few, just for the sake of time and trial to figure out what it took in order to get this done. We decided windows are something we can definitely finish installing later on if we happen to run short on time. So we just wanted to get a few put in immediately. And there you see the first loft beam. And here we are installing the floor for our loft. Stay tuned for what's next.
Thanks for joining us.
Give us a like and subscribe and follow for our next adventures on Wild and Free
Interior Alaska.